Hello, my name is Yang Xiao. I am a PhD student from Virginia Tech. I present our paper, Modeling the Impact of Network Connectivity on Consensus Security of Proof-of-Work Blockchain. The aim of this work is to address the important issue of blockchain security, and specifically consensus security. We observe that previous analysis on this topic have idealistic assumptions and does not consider the impact of the underlying network. Here we fill this gap by incorporating the network perspective into security analysis of blockchain. But first of all, some blockchain basics. Blockchain has been a very hot topic recently for its success in cryptocurrencies and potential applications from global payment networks to supply chain. Simply put, blockchain is a decentralized ledger keeping system in that every node keeps a track of the system's transaction history in the form of blockchain, and all nodes rely on a consensus protocol to agree on a single, unified, and correct blockchain without the help of a trusted authority. A typical consensus protocol for blockchain consists of 5 components. Block proposal is responsible for the packing transactions into blocks. Information propagation regulates how blocks and transactions are disseminated and relayed across the network. Block validation checks if a block and the included transactions are valid. Block finalization is used to reach a conclusion about which block to accept into the blockchain. An incentive mechanism determines how to incentivize owner's participation. Among all the blockchain designs, proof-of-work blockchain is currently the most popular one among public cryptocurrencies. For instance, among the 10 cryptocurrencies with the highest market capitalization, 4 of them use some form of proof-of-work blockchain design. But for the consensus protocol, we caution that the term of block proof-of-work, or POW, actually refers to the block proposal mechanism. The other 4 components are usually inherited from Bitcoin's Nakamoto consensus protocol. So information propagation relies on peer-to-peer gossiping. Block validation involves proof-of-work check and transaction check. Block finalization is accomplished by the longest chain rule, which means any node should accept the longest blockchain it sees. And lastly, the incentive mechanism typically involves distributing transaction fees and new tokens to the block proposers. And more specifically, the proof-of-work hashing game involves every node trying to find a nonce that the hash function of the nonce plus some block content is smaller than a certain difficulty value or target. The chance to find such a nonce is thus proportional to the player's computing power or hashing power, and whoever finds a nonce can propose a new block. This process is commonly modeled by a Poisson process in previous work. There is an outstanding phenomenon called blockchain fork, which results in multiple valid blocks competing for a single position in the blockchain. Why it can happen? Because if 2 blocks are proposed too close enough or nearly simultaneously, the corresponding block proposer will have no idea of each other's existence because of the delay in the block propagation in the real network. As a result, the network comes to a stalemate situation that different nodes end up following different competing blocks, and the network is partitioned. This scenario can still be resolved by the longest chain rule. That is, whichever block gets extended first should be accepted and used as the longest chain. And with the above consensus protocol, what is consensus security? As we mentioned, the goal of consensus in blockchain is to let the decentralized network to agree on a single, unified, and correct blockchain. And it should be secure against certain malicious players. In the honest mining case, which is briefly analyzed in Nakamoto's Bitcoin white paper, the nodes can potentially collude to dominate the generation of new blocks, which can be achieved only if the malicious party controls more than half of the total computing power because of the proof-of-work process. Otherwise, this consensus is secure in that probabilistic finality can be achieved, which means any block already written on the blockchain should be valid and irreversible, and a double spending attack is unlikely to happen. This notion of consensus security is also known as the honest majority premise. There is another type of adversarial case called selfish mining, which is proposed much more recently. it assumes a pool of nodes called a selfish mining pool performs the selfish mining strategy. The strategy itself, the core idea is to weaponize blockchain forks to deliberately obstruct the propagation of the honest blocks. And by doing so, the selfish mining pool can win positive mining gain. That is, the pool wins extra blocks compared to their actual share of computing power. But how much extra depends on the key metric, which we call the communication capability, or gamma SM. So as a result, the honest majority premise no longer holds for selfish mining because when other nodes see the selfish mining pool has extra mining gain, and from the game theoretic point of view, they will join the selfish mining pool. However, the above classical analyses are flawed. What is missing is the impact of the underlying network structure, or more specifically, connectivity pattern on the consensus security. To give a rough idea, if the network connectivity is heterogeneous, then the fork race will favor those blocks proposed by better connected nodes. So for the honest mining case, for example, during the fork race, the actual network is not evenly partitioned. And very likely the green block is proposed by somebody better connected and has the support of more nodes before it encounters the blue block during the stalemate. Green block will have a higher chance of being extended. As for the selfish mining case, the previous studies all consider the selfish mining pools and gamma SM as a fixed value. However, it really depends on the selfish mining pool's status in the network, and it should change as the pool continues to expand in the network. So in response, we propose a model to evaluate the impact of network on consensus security. More specifically, we perform probabilistic analysis on the consensus protocol, on network model and adversarial model to compute several security thresholds or metrics. In this paper, we focus on proof of work blockchain and model the network as a peer-to-peer network, and the connectivity can be modeled by the adjacency matrix. And we consider two adversary cases, honest mining and selfish mining, with the worst case scenarios. That means for honest mining, we assume the most powerful nodes will collude. And for selfish mining, we assume the selfish mining pool will expand from the most powerful nodes. The mining revenue of node I is measured by the percentage of total blocks in the finalized blockchain that belongs to I. And mining gain is the mining revenue minus its computing cost. And from the mining revenue distribution of all nodes, we can derive two security metrics. The 50% attack threshold measures the least amount of computing power the malicious party needs to control to achieve 50% of all mining revenue. And the second one, profitability threshold, measures the least amount of computing power the selfish mining pool needs to control to break even with their computing costs or to achieve positive mining gain. First, we move to the honest mining case. To facilitate the theoretical analysis, we define two events, the canonization event and the fork stalemate event. We say a block is canonized if it gets fully propagated in the network without encountering any competition. We say a fork stalemate happens if the network is partitioned into two groups and each group is working on a different block, so they are competing. Then we define two discrete time random processes, BI and WI, which are embedded right after each canonization event. Without speaking too much of the technical details, we say WI essentially evaluates the chance for node I to win the next block. We propose that the expected value of WI is a conservative estimate of I's mining revenue, which is proved in this paper. The estimation gap diminishes if the fork rate decreases. Then we move to calculate the expected value of WI. Since WI equals to 1 means node I wins the next block, it has three different winning cases. Case 1, I propose the first block and encounters no competition at all. This is called no fork win. Case 2, I propose the first block but encounters a competing block from another node called, say, J. And for case 3, some other node J proposes the first block, but I propose the second block, and they they compete with each other. And for case 3 and case 2, so they are called fork win. For no fork win, its probability equals to the probability that no competing block is proposed throughout the propagation of ith block, which is easier to compute. But the first, second, and third case, that is a fork win cases, is harder to compute. And to do that, we need to compute node i's communication capability over any other node, denoted by omega I over j. For example, within the figure below, for case 2, I proposes the first block, we say at time 0, and j proposes the second, the competing block at time t. And then the network comes to a stalemate and is partitioned into 2 groups. Then the communication capability, omega I over j, is estimated by the combined computing power that follow i's block at a stalemate, which corresponds to the blue area of the right figure. And essentially, this can be computed after we have the information propagation dynamics of the underlying network. With all these calculations, we can finally obtain the expected value of WI and use it to estimate the mining revenue distribution of all nodes. Then, what's the consequence or security implications? The foremost one is the unfairness in mining revenue. For example, in the left figure, node I lies in a better connected network region, where node J lies in a sparsely connected region. As in the right figure, the analysis we have done shows that even if I and J have the same actual mining power, I can achieve positive mining gain while J achieves negative mining gain. And this unfairness in mining gains will aggravate for shorter block intervals. And this unfairness has a negative impact on consensus security. If the most connected nodes collude, their combined mining revenue can surpass 50% of the total mining revenue, even their actual combined computing power is far less than 50%. So in other words, the 50% attack threshold can be much lower than 50%. To evaluate the above analysis, we randomly generated graphs with n nodes, and their degrees are exponentially distributed to simulate the heterogeneity in connectivity. And we configure different pi values and note that pi is the inverse of block interval. It can be observed that less overall node connectivity and a higher heterogeneity in node degrees indeed cause the mining gain distribution to be more unfair. And a larger pi makes it even worse. We also find that the estimation method we propose in proposition 1 is indeed a conservative estimation of the actual mining revenue. As you can see in the figure that the analytical result is enveloped by the simulation result, and their gap becomes smaller when the graph is more connected and with smaller pi. Then we move to the second case, the selfish mining case. Then here we give more details about selfish mining strategy. The strategy is collectively performed by a selfish mining pool. The pool keeps a private chain, while the honest public keep the honest chain. When the selfish mining pool finds a new block, it conceals it and adds it to the private chain first, and then strategically release the private chain when the pool sees the honest chain catches up with the private chain. And more specifically, the strategy can be modeled as a continuous time Markov chain with state number representing the private chain's lead over the honest chain. The mining gain of the selfish mining pool can be conveniently derived from the steady states probabilities of Markov chain. Communication capability of the selfish mining pool, or gamma SM, means the estimated ratio of honest computing power that will choose the selfish mining pool's private chain over the honest chain during the fork race. It has been shown that the selfish mining pool's revenue is linear to gamma SM. So here our goal is to derive gamma SM from the network connectivity patterns. First, we treat the selfish mining pool as a supernode that preserves all the connections of its pool members' connections. Then we discover that gamma SM coincides with a well-known between centrality measure weighted by mining powers. That is, for any pair of honest nodes I and j, and we assume it is I that releases a block that triggers the selfish mining pool to release a private chain. Then the probability of the selfish mining pool to deliver its private chain ahead of ith block to j equals to the chance that the pool resides in the shortest path between I and j. To give you an example, in the right figure, there are 4 honest nodes. Node 1 releases a block, and at the same time, the self-efficient mining pool releases its private chain. And for different source destination pairs, or J's, the self-efficient mining pool may or may not reside in the shortest path, so result in different winning chances. And by doing so, we conclude that the mining power between the centrality measure is an accurate evaluation of gamma SM. As for the security implications, as the self-efficient mining pool expands, gamma SM will rise and achieve higher mining gain for the pool. And if the self-efficient mining pool expands from better connected nodes, then gamma SM will rise even faster and approach the profitability threshold even sooner. We evaluate our analysis with 3 randomly generated graphs, with 1 exponential graph as we have used in the honest mining case, and 2 regular graphs. For the exponential graph specifically, we configured the self-efficient mining pool to expand from the most connected nodes as an optimal expansion strategy. As you can see in the experiment result, if the network is sparser, and by using the optimal expansion strategy, we can say that they can reach their profitability much sooner. The second figure shows that for the relative mining gain results, our analysis matches well with the simulation. So in summary, we propose a model to quantify the study impact of network connectivity on blockchain consensus security. We analyzed 2 adversarial cases, honest mining with potential collusion and selfish mining. The analysis results are verified by simulation. As for the takeaways, first, the actual proof of work blockchain consensus security is weaker than you think because of the heterogeneous network connectivity, as we have demonstrated through analysis and simulation. Second, if there is a mining pool, its expansion should always be monitored just in case it adopts selfish mining and corrupts its most connecting nodes. And third, there can be many other cross-layer analyses to deal with blockchain security. We consider them as future work. Thank you.